Hello and welcome to the UI Chat podcast from Interface, the monthly show talking about everything Ubiquiti and networking. I'm your host Alex, and once again I'm joined by Evan McCann, filling in for Willie Howe. Welcome, Evan.
Thanks for having me again.
Nice one. How you doing?
Good. Did you get your new phone yet?
I did. I got my new phone. Yeah, all good.
I know this isn't Ubiquiti, but yeah, I just got my. You have 15 Pro.
Yep, 15 Pro.
Nice.
Yeah.
What color?
I went for a white titanium. So
okay.
The blue fine woven case. I quite like the case. I've seen quite a few bits and pieces online about people saying, "Oh, they're not very good," but I quite like it.
Yeah, I've heard the same.
All good. It's been a busy month for Ubiquiti again. Got quite a big amount of show notes here. So, I'm going to get started with the update on UniFi Identity and Identity Enterprise. I think we touched on this. I think we maybe touched on this last episode. I can't quite remember. But basically, it's just some pricing changes to the subscription, and also what comes free has got a bit less than it used to be. I think that's right.
Yeah, what we covered last time was they made an announcement that something was coming. This is what was coming. So they did officially rename it. It used to be UID, now it's UniFi Identity, and it's referred to everywhere there. But the big changes was the pricing and the new free unlimited user plan. So I think they have 3 different versions of UniFi Identity now. They have the free version, the enterprise version, and then I think it's the EA free version. So it's a little confusing, but there's tiers and there's a lot of changes with what features are where and all that.
Yeah, so we've got sort of identity enterprise, as you said, and then hopefully there was some murmurings about it's going to be there's less for free essentially, but it looks like that this looks like a good addition to UniFi Identity. So.
Well, yeah, it actually seems like there's more for free. If you're looking at, I don't know if it's the basic plan or the enterprise basic plan, whatever you want to call that free version. That it used to be, I think, the 5 user limit single site.
Yep.
And now they have, I think, the more expanded free version, which is still a single site, but it's unlimited users, and there's a subset of features that are there. So that's like what used to be UID Wi-Fi and UID VPN. Now they just call it one-click Wi-Fi and one-click VPN. Door access, the EV charging, that's all part of, the new free plan.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of specifics in that announcement that they have, and it's still in progress. Some features are still rolling out. But yeah, I think a lot of people are happy to see the non-user cap free option there.
Yeah, and then you get up to 3 SSO apps, which is an early access feature. So as I mentioned last episode, I used to use UID at the place I used to work before, Hostify, and I never really got a chance to play with it, and I'm not entirely sure what it does. So I don't know if you know what the SSO apps are.
Yeah, I don't think... that's a coming soon, more details to come type of feature. But yeah, my impression is that you'll be able to sign in. So that's, single sign-on SSO. So I don't know what kind of apps they're planning to integrate, but I can imagine you could log into Jira or your ticketing system or those kind of things, and your identity source would be UniFi, and you could log in without having a separate account for those up to 3, or if you pay per month you get unlimited.
Yeah, there's also something interesting I found in here. On the standard plan you get MDM for Mac, so they're sort of getting into the device management sort of world as well, which is interesting. So
yeah, and I saw that too, and that was news to me in that the release saying the new plan was coming. So I think that's possibly EA, that feature specifically. But yeah, I'm curious if they're going with a third party for mobile device management, or that's something they're doing, because I think that would be new.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of stuff. So there's a link in the show notes, and if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a link in the description to. Basically, there's a massive post that Ubiquiti put out with it's like a table of what features are going to come to what things. So looks pretty good. And if you're in the market for device management and people management, I guess it's UID UniFi Identity is pretty good. So awesome.
Yeah. Now you can charge your EV with UniFi. Wow.
And there's also a note here. We mentioned last month that UID is going to be UniFi Identity going forward, and that's going to be within UniFi OS 3.1.16. It's interesting that they've changed it. I guess UID was a bit confusing for some people. I'm not too sure unless you knew what it was.
Yeah, I think it's part of their push with this new free tier. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get more people aware of it, and less acronyms, the better.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also some follow up from last episode. So I think you found out what DNS Shield was. So that's essentially is that just DNS fallback? I guess.
Well, that's what we were confused about. They're two separate things. So we were thinking maybe DNS Shield was that.
Yep.
But no, that's specifically called DNS Fallback, where they kind of have an invisible DNS server. If you have a custom one and it's not responding, they have kind of a global fallback in place. They don't really say what that is. I don't know if that's a service they run or if that's just like pointing to Google 8888. But that's what fallback is. So I'm still not sure what DNS Shield is. I don't know if you've seen anything else about that.
I think I found something. I think it is HTTPS DNS.
That makes sense.
I was looking into it for a piece of content for Hostify, and I remember doing some research on it, and it was something called DOH, so called DNS over HTTPS. So essentially designed to offer more secure transmission of DNS requests here.
Right. And I think that still requires UniFi OS 3.2.
It does, yeah.
More details coming.
Yeah, it should make things a little bit more secure, which is good. Always good to see. But yeah, that global fallback thing, I think I remember UI Glenn put something in the community at some point. It was if the DNS settings that you've put in aren't working for whatever reason, I think it just falls back to Google's DNS, as you said, or whatever's been set. So
right, and fallback is there as of 3.1.16.
Yep.
I think Shield is 3.2.
That's right, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, some good additions to UniFi. The next thing we're going to look at is this video from Chris. Chris Sherwood from Crosstalk Solutions made this really cool video on all the different types of VPN that you can get within Ubiquiti UniFi. And there's a lot of stuff in here that there's a lot more stuff than I remembered there was. So it's really, really good video. Really goes in depth into the types of VPN that you can get within UniFi. So really good.
Yeah, I just added that because I saw that video after we were talking about teleport versus site magic and all the it's helpful to have one video to kind of look at all the different options, and yeah, he covers it well.
Yeah, tons of stuff. So you got teleport VPN, you got firewall rules for the VPN, you've also got site to site, the old fashioned site to site, and then that new site magic, which isn't available on self-hosted stuff. So you have to have a UniFi OS console, which is a bit not great, but it is what it is. So
right.
And then one more thing here was that Ubiquiti has released a brand new design.ui.com. I haven't even seen this yet. I don't know if you've had a chance to play with the new design center, but so I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, this was the consulting kind of offering that they we found last time, but we weren't sure what it was. So they did actually have like an announcement tweet about that. So it is something they're doing. They didn't really provide any more details. They just said fill out this form and contact us. We'll get back to you. But yeah, it's official.
Yeah, I don't know if I've just gone to design.ui.com as well, like a wizard page, and it looks new. I haven't looked at this center for a little while. I don't know if this is what I'm looking at is actually new, but it looks like
experts.ui.com is the new part.
Cool.
Right. So
yeah, so no more information on that, but so that's all the little bits and pieces we had from last episode, just the follow-up items. I'm going to get into the actual new stuff now. So there was a new UniFi update released 75174, and at Hostify we actually had to pull it from releases because it was going to cause some problems. And do you know a bit more about what happened with this? It was the fact that some Wi-Fi networks weren't getting broadcast properly.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, what the issue was after 7.5.174 was released as a release candidate, people were installing that and then their Wi-Fi networks were being paused. So it was showing in the GUI as paused, which means we're not going to broadcast that network. So I think it flipped the pause on. So that's why they pulled that, and I guess why you guys pulled it as well.
That's right.
So .176, the new, I think it's still currently a release candidate.
It's actually GA as of yesterday now, which is good.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the next GA version then. But yeah, that minor version bump was just to fix that little bug.
Yeah, and then within 174, we got all of those huge additions. I think we spoke about last episode. So you got latency test. There's a ton of stuff for 6 gigahertz in there. The DNS shield we spoke about. That new topology view. So massive update, and 176 it has all those improvements in there as well, which is really good.
Yeah, and 7.5 is now in early access. The biggest thing I saw for that was private pre-shared keys. So that's like a PSK network. Right. I don't know a ton about that.
No, I didn't either.
But I know a lot of people are very excited about that. It's just like basically you have a unique password per client rather than one shared pre-shared key for the whole network. So yeah, that and some more IPv6 work, which is always good to see.
Yeah, so just to clarify, that's 75185, that one.
Correct.
And there's also some information about 24-volt passive to get a better clarity on if you're enabling it and that sort of thing. There's also something about limiting auto backup options to preserve storage. Sorry. So yeah, nice update. Yeah, I've never heard of that pre-shared key thing with Wi-Fi before, so be interested to see how that works. I don't know if that's a WPA 3 thing, but
no, I believe it's still WPA 2. I could be incorrect, but yeah, I would have to do a little bit more digging because that's a pretty new thing to me.
Yeah.
The other thing from 7.5 that was interesting was they have a new dashboard for Wi-Fi-only setups.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is that if you don't have a unified gateway in the desktop view? Yeah, it's not like the standalone, like if you just use the mobile app in a single AP and you have that standalone setup. That's always been very limited.
Yeah.
I was wondering if they maybe updated that as well, but yeah, it sounds like it's just for those without a unified gateway.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at this update yet, but I think so. So obviously we get a lot of customers that just have UniFi APs without any gateways, so it's quite a nice sort of, you get more information without wasting screen real estate, so that's quite good.
Right, because yeah, ever since, at least in all the 7 releases, when you don't have a unified gateway, the dashboard is very very blank. Not many graphs or details or anything. So it's good they're working on that because a lot of people do deploy that way.
Yeah, definitely. So 75185 is currently in EA, and then just to clarify, 75176 is as of yesterday. It's now GA, so you can go ahead and update your device if you want to. Next thing we're going to look at is the mobile router. So I reviewed this for Hostify. I think I'm the only person who's reviewed it so far. I don't think it's massively popular, and I think that's mainly to do with how it's been marketed. And the way Ubiquiti have marketed it is towards fleet. It's very specific, very niche sort of use case, but towards fleet management. And I think some people thought that it was a hotspot thing that would integrate with UniFi nicely. So if you got a UniFi network at home, you could take it with you. It's sort of VPN back to the home network, but it doesn't really do that. And it requires a subscription to manage it remotely, which goes against what UniFi's have been about a little bit. But there's an update for it, 1.6.3, which got released to GA last week. And it allows you to put an OpenVPN client on the UMR itself, and then you can use the touchscreen to turn on the VPN as well, which is quite nice. So, I think if you were planning to use it for a mobile hotspot when you're traveling, that sort of thing, there are better devices out there for it. But at least it does have some nice features now. And then that sort of use case for it sort of lends in nicely to the UMT as well. So there's an FCC filing the other day, which is something called the UniFi Mobility Tracker. And there's a letter of a description in the FCC filings. It says the UniFi Mobility Tracker is a weatherproof asset tracking device with integrated LTE camera. And it says uses M1 technology, which I'm not entirely sure what that is, for location tracking and reporting. So yeah, it looks like they're doing business like fleet management stuff with it and expanding that a little bit. So interesting sort of use case for it.
Yeah, and I still personally get confused with the LTE backup Pro versus the mobile router. LTE backup is just like you have a home network, you want cellular data as a backup internet connection. This
Yep.
mobile router is like you have an RV or you're on a trade show floor and you just need a single device to give you mobile data and a local network to use. And yeah, the UMT, I just heard about that now from you. You'd think maybe they would include that with the mobile router, or maybe have like a mobile router pro that includes GPS and that tracking ability. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why it needs to be a separate device, and I'm curious. Is it like an AirTag size, or is it larger? What's that device? And yeah, probably points to them building out more equipment for that kind of use case, I would imagine.
Yeah, so it has 2.4 gig only, which makes it sound like it's got Bluetooth, and then
Yeah.
there's some antennas for it, and there's a label location. There's no real. So when you go on the FCC, there's things that are removed and things that are able to be viewed by the public, and the schematics and sort of the photographs are all hidden, which is a shame.
Right. Well, actually, and I'm looking at the mobile router page now.
Yeah.
It has integrated GPS.
It does, yeah.
So is this is a tag one to add to other equipment, I guess, maybe for tracking other equipment that you're sending out to that site or that location, maybe?
Yeah, it says asset tracking, which I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. I think with the mobile router, so when you have fleets and that sort of thing, you usually have to get GPS tracking fitted afterwards, and there's a lot of wiring. There's a lot of wiring and sort of third-party work that needs to be done to that vehicle to get it tracked. Whereas this is sort of like an add-on device, and I think we mentioned last episode, or mentioned before, that Amazon delivery drivers, this would be beneficial for them because the added gain of the antenna, the added gain of the UMR would, in theory, outweigh what their phone could do, and you might get better mobile coverage, and also you could track where the vehicle is. I don't know what this is for, but yeah. So we shall
We'll
see.
see.
And then you added something to the show notes, which I completely missed because there's so much stuff happening all the time. The LTU line of devices. So for people unaware, UISP LTU is sort of the next generation of AirMax, and it's very custom. For a long time, the flexibility that we had with AirMax, you just couldn't do with LTU. So you couldn't, for example, set point-to-points of two devices like a NanoStation loco. Just wasn't possible until now. So they released 1.5.1. It looks like you can point to point all the CPE models, which makes things a lot more flexible. That's really good to see.
Yeah, next generation Air Max is putting it mildly. I think the LTU, I think it's 2018, give or take, was when that was first rolled out, and the equipment there, it's always been kind of a weird mix because the AirFiber 5X HD, which is like a connectorized point to point or like base station for a bunch of CPE. That is technically part. I think it's the same silicon as the LTU Rocket, which is a connectorized AP for LTU networks, and that's what I used when I was working for WISP. A lot of LTU stuff. But yeah, the new feature, which I think has been long promised, just like a lot of stuff with LTU, they basically, when LTU launched, they said, we're going to do XYZ feature, and some of those things still aren't here. I think this is one of those things. So I'm very excited to see that. What the software release does, it allows you to take the small CPE radios, which you normally have like on a home. If you have like a point-to-multipoint network, you'd have 10 LTU lights on 10 different houses, and you'd use the Rocket to distribute the signal to them. But this allows 2 LTU lights to communicate directly, or LTU Pro, all their other CPE radios. So it's adding a feature to existing hardware that I'm pretty sure has been promised for years, but still always happy to see movement on AirFiber, AirMax, LTU, all of their equipment on that side of the business.
Yeah, it's like, even though it's probably less popular than UniFi is now, it's just nice that they're sticking to it, because what else is there? You got, for this sort of thing, you got Cambium, but I've used that before and it's too expensive and not great. And then you got TP-Link do their own point-to-point service. It's just great that Ubiquiti is sticking with it, because there's nothing really out there that like it.
I'm more familiar with this than probably most people listening, but Mimosa is a similar price to performance kind of range. Cambium's definitely high end, but Ubiquiti's always been kind of a sweet spot for nice software, good interface, cheap hardware, relatively good performance. You'll get way better performance out of Cambium or more expensive gear.
Yeah.
But LTU's, not bad. The last big shoe I'm waiting to drop is they released something called the UISP Horn, maybe a year ago, which is like a standalone antenna for this kind of equipment, and it mentions support for up to, I think it's 6.4 gigahertz or the mid-range 6 gigahertz. So I'm still waiting for either an LTU radio that supports 6E 6 gigahertz, or maybe some AirFiber or AirMax equipment that does. So they still haven't kind of gotten into the 6 gigahertz range, which I believe Mimosa has, and a lot of other
Cambium has as well,
vendors,
I believe.
Yes. Yep. So a lot of vendors in that space already have, because it was difficult when 6E was new, especially for outdoor operation. There's a whole separate system that's similar to DFS, where you need to coordinate and you need to back off if there's existing people in that space. So it was complicated to get those rules finalized and get that system operational. So I know that was part of the delay. But other vendors have that equipment. Why hasn't Ubiquiti? And I think it comes back to them investing in UniFi and mobile routers and all that other stuff, where they're actually selling a lot of equipment. And I think they're selling less LTUs and AirMax, and that's why they're kind of slower.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the UISP horn's cool. I've got one on the floor over there.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah, one sec.
There you go. So is that just AirMax, or what's on the...
So, this is... I don't know if you can see that. That's an LTE rocket on the back there.
Okay.
It's a big old thing. Got it for a video.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really well made. And I've looked at the RF element stuff before, and I think this is probably similar sort of build construction and quality.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we used RF elements. Great equipment, great horns. They have a wide range of asymmetrical horns and symmetrical horns, dishes, all that stuff. So it looks kind of like a knockoff RF elements. It looks very similar in design. But yeah, now we just need 6 gigahertz radios to go with it.
Yeah, I noticed that. The UISP dish as well. That's very similar to RF Elements Ultra dish. Very similar looking thing. And the mounting situation on the back is very similar. The one thing that horn does really well is the GPS looks to be integrated in the back. So
oh, no more external GPS antenna?
It's all in here, I think, because there's connectors for it inside. But there's no external thing that you have to hide away like you do with UISP or the RF element, sorry. So yeah.
Yeah, with the RF elements twist port adapter, you kind of have to wrap a little external GPS puck and put it in there. But yeah, benefits of building both parts, you can just integrate it all.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. I think you're right. I think they're focusing on things that are going to make them money. But hopefully they do 6 gigahertz at some point. Because even RF Elements actually have got 6 gigahertz stuff out now. It's just for... There's no particular brand that they've mentioned. It just says, we've got some new stuff out. So, pretty cool. Don't know if we can... Well, I think we could talk about this. It's fine. So the software for this is in beta, and so it's the SolarPoint. I don't think many people are going to know what this is. But I've got one. And... the last software update for it, I think, was 2021 or 2020. So 3 years ago, 1.1.5 was released, or 1.1.15, 1.1.5, and that was the December 2020. So that was ages ago.
Right. Yeah. This not super relevant. Probably not many people have this equipment kicking around anymore. I just thought it was funny, especially because we were talking about the edge routers and edge switches. They've been kind of on 1.9 forever, and this was like out of the blue. Here's 2.0 for stuff we haven't sold for years ago. For years. So hey, maybe there's hope for EdgeMax yet.
One thing it did fix was, so on the SolarPoint, I'll put a picture of my one on screen. But it has a weather forecast which has famously been broken for ages. So basically, you go on the screen and put in you drop a pin on the map where the SolarPoint is, and it'll give you a forecast of what it thinks the system will be doing. One thing I noticed with this software, that it seems to be charging faster. It seems to be I haven't got any data to back it up, but just my observation of the device, it seems to be charging a bit more efficiently in the same sort of light conditions as before. So I don't know if they've fixed some of the charging mechanisms. I'm not really sure, but so they've actually released 2 versions of software. One was end of August, they released 2.0, and that had a new forecast provider, which is what I mentioned, and some bits and pieces of fix. And they released beta 2 not so long ago, and that had some other things. So yeah, it's really good. I think they are still selling it because when the store was redone, the SolarPoint's still there. It's just out of stock, and people have been asking for the last 3 years, where is it? Where is it? I think they've been prioritizing with the chip shortages. I don't know if that's still happening, but prioritizing things that are actually going to sell. They do have a use case, and they seem to be focusing again on power things because we've got the UISP Power Pro and the UISP Power. So again, these are very, very specific niche things for WISPs. But yeah, it's really good. So
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were still in the store. There they are. So yeah, I guess good that they're still supporting the software if they're still selling it.
yeah, they've been out of stock for ages. And if you search the SKU for the product, there's a MSP in the UK that says they're awaiting a delivery of 12, and it just says they've got no ETA of them.
Right. It's probably been that way for 3 years.
We shall see what happens, but they've updated the logos on the software and some other bits on there, so it's all good. I spotted this on the forums of the day, and then just tucked away in a 3-page thread on the forums was something that Ubiquiti never does, which is a roadmap for a product. So UniFi Talk roadmap, we've now got an 8-step roadmap for UniFi Talk, which is awesome. So
right, it's weird that it's just a comment in a thread and it's not like an official announcement. So maybe they'll do that later. But I mean, you've definitely used UniFi Talk way more. Is there stuff in this list that you're excited about, or you think it would be,
yeah, the only thing I've played around with UniFi Talk is I managed to import them from the US before you could. Well, I actually import them from the US. The old ATA device, and then the Talk Flex, which is actually discontinued. That plastic phone was like $29. It's cool. The thing I'm looking forward to is number 3 is the expansion to the UK, because I will end up using it. And the soft phone's really good, and for people with Starlink, the fact that it will work with carrier grade NAP is a really, really good addition. I didn't realize that this number 6 one. So Chris Sherwood knows more about VoIP than anyone really, and he said that this address configuration per phone number is apparently, he was surprised he didn't have it anyway. It's quite an important thing for safety. So when you ring up the emergency services, it somehow the address gets shared, and yeah, that's really important. I'm surprised he didn't have it either. So yeah.
Yeah, Chris from Crosstalk definitely would be my go-to person to learn more about that. But yeah, I saw that same tweet, and yeah, I mean that's really important for safety, because yeah, if you have you have a business with multiple locations, different even addresses within the same county, at least in the U.S., you could potentially be going to a different 911 provider. So the fact that you couldn't do per phone number, which could be per location, or if you can't provide your address to 911 or emergency providers, that's a big safety issue.
Yeah, and the next one is a next generation UniFi Talk phone lineup, but I was confused with that because the phones sort of got refreshed anyway, and there was some stuff that got removed. So as I mentioned, there's a plastic phone, the Talk Flex, which just mysteriously disappeared. That was quite a good price. And they've got all 3 of the devices at the moment. They've got the Touch Max, Touch, and then the ATA. So what a next generation Talk phone lineup means, I'm not entirely sure. But
my understanding of those devices, they're basically Android devices. Like those touchscreens are basically, I think last time I looked, it might have been a while ago, but they had a very old version of Android that they were kind of customizing. So I bet the next generation is either a newer version of Android or maybe something custom built. And maybe they'll have a replacement for that. I think it was like $29 Flex.
Yeah.
Something really cheap, because if people want to go all in on Talk, they're going to need those hardware options, and new hardware would be nice.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's, as I said, it is weird that it was hidden away, but we shall see. It's had a lot of views, so 1.2 thousand views in that thread. So definitely something people want to see. So we had an outage again with the UniFi portal for quite a while. I think there was 2 outages back to back, which was quite funny, but This was when I think so. We're recording on the 26th of September. This was on September 19th, and there was some maintenance and some outage that happened. So it was quite a long time that was down for. So
Yeah, I mean, I didn't pay too close of attention to this. I know that there was an issue with backups. I think this is unrelated, and that was maybe in August.
It's unrelated.
There was an issue with, that was an issue where if you signed in with your UI.com account and did their auto backup, I believe those backups were not able to be restored or they weren't being saved. I don't know the specifics on that issue, but this was separate. Yeah. This was when you go to unifi.ui.com to access remotely your devices and manage them through that portal.
Yeah,
that was at an outage, and I think it was either, I don't know if it was Ubiquiti's fault or AWS's fault, which they use for their hosting.
Mm-hmm.
The one big thing I saw that I didn't know that existed before, status.ui.com. I don't think that's new, but I never knew that was there.
Oh no, it's
which
built.
Which is a handy little.
Yeah, it's built upon. So I get SMS alerts when their stuff goes down, but it's built upon. I think Atlassian status pages. But no, this is not new at all. I think it's been here for ages, and it's got bigger and bigger with more stuff on it. But that's where all the outages get talked about.
Yeah, so I knew it wasn't new. I either knew about it and forgot it existed, or I just rediscovered it.
Yeah.
I think that's a handy thing to have bookmarked in case you have any issues. Just check out status.ui.com.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's some confusion with the way it works a little bit. So it's not necessarily that the devices are getting hosted there, and people may think, if the cloud goes down, you're not going to log into anything at all. It's simply a cloud broker. So unlike any other service uses the cloud, with Ubiquiti stuff, it basically does a handshake. This is why it works so well over carrier grade now. Is that it just does a handshake over the device, reaches out to the cloud, does a handshake between you and the device, and then the cloud becomes irrelevant. It's just there to initiate the connection, and you actually do peer to peer between the MVR, the whatever device you've got. It's quite a unique way of doing things. It probably reduces their cloud costs doing it that way as well. And for privacy as well, it's really, really important. So,
right, and this outage was just for like administrative.
That's right.
Or viewing the device access. Like if you were on that network, you were still as long as you had local internet connection, you still had internet access and all that. But kind of weird to have them fumbling a few times on something so core to their product.
I know. Yeah, hopefully it gets sorted. And then you've labelled this as boring merch, which I kind of agree with a little bit. I've got some original merch that Ubiquiti has got some of their t-shirts and hats and things. And they discontinued it when they changed their logo, and they've just released some new stuff. This was about a month ago now. And you are right, it's not very imaginative. Just simply some t-shirts and things. So.
Yeah, I don't have any of their old merch, but I've seen it. I think it was typically like blue and at least said like Ubiquiti. And
yeah.
They've had a few different things. But yeah, they have new merch, and it's just, okay, do you want something that's black and has a U on it?
Yep.
So that's why I was like, that's the least creative, boring merch I've seen. But cool that you can rep Ubiquiti if people know what that U stands for.
Yeah, so they got hoodies, t-shirts, hats, and beanies. The prices are actually okay, but there is just the one color, as you said. And it's only on sale in the US, which I guess they'll expand it at some point because it was very, very delayed expansion to the other areas of the world. But as of recording, it's only available in the US still. So,
yeah, their merch roadmap is probably in a comment thread somewhere.
Awesome. And then I didn't really know because I don't do much. Well, I don't do any cable deployments really, but I didn't know that a cable raceway was actually a thing. It's sort of like trunking. It's got a funny name for it, really. And this was actually spotted by Cody in one of his videos. And it's just a cable management system for the UniFi Dreamwall and different shapes for it. So I guess it's to make, because UniFi Dreamwall is just a one-piece product. Everything's it's all in one design. It just makes cabling management a bit easier, I guess. So.
Yeah, raceway is a term I know.
Okay.
I think of this more generally as like conduit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Basically a tube you put cables into. So cable raceway is usually like form-fitted, rigid plastic. So that's exactly what this is, where it's an angled thing that you can run cables out of the dream wall into and then run it down to, wherever they're going. So it's nice that they're addressing that. I remember I kind of poked fun at the original dream wall announcement because they have all those really pretty images of like these neat, perfect cable runs going out. And then I know like in the installations like Cody has done and other people have done, the way you want to do it is have it go into the wall. So they just come right out of the dream wall and go directly in and then, run to wherever they need to. But to make it cleaner, if you don't have the ability to get into the wall, which is the case for a lot of people that, if it's not new construction, you don't want to have to like rip out the drywall, run cable behind, patch it up. So yeah, using a cable raceway or some sort of cable cover, conduit, whatever, probably makes the dream wall, an easier install for a lot of people that are, not building a brand new house.
Yeah, it's quite well priced. I don't really know what this sort of thing should be priced about, but it says it's about $20, well, €26 for some of these items. So as of recording, the UK store's gone still. It came back for like 1 day, so you have to order stuff from the EU again, which is quite funny. So
wait, back up. They got rid of the UK store?
Yeah, so uk.store.ui.com was, if you went to that domain, it would say it's down for maintenance. There was some problem with, I guess, importing stuff here because the stock wasn't. The stock levels between the EU store and the UK store were never comparable. There was basically barely anything on the UK store, and they've got rid of it. So now, if you want to buy stuff from the UK, you have to go to eu.store and then you click the country drop down. So. And that means you have to buy everything in euros, which makes accounting a bit of a pain. So,
right, that's odd. I'm sure. I think you're right. It sounds like it's probably just trouble getting products imported or setting up a store there. But that's weird that just went away.
Well, I doubt they would have pulled out because they went to the effort of actually creating an official official company for importing stuff here with a head office and dedicated warehouses, because there was when you got an invoice from the store, it had details of the like a company number, and you could do research on where that company is and who owns it and stuff. So I doubt they would have gone to that much effort just to get rid of it a few months later. So
right, and UniFi Talk is coming to the UK. They specifically called that out
in Q3, which Q3 expired. Q3 is over in 4 days, so we shall see.
Better get on it.
Yeah, they need to get on that. I think as of the 1st of October, I think it's officially Q4, so funny. And then just before we started recording, there was some things that you noted on the store that the names have changed for certain switches. Now, I think this is to do with making things easier, but then you pointed out that some of them aren't very consistent or good. So do you want to talk about what you mean?
Yeah, I could go off here just because I just updated my UniFi network comparison charts, so I was going through line by line for little typos and stuff like that, and I noticed I don't know if this changed when they updated the store back 2 months ago or over the summer, but I just noticed that especially a lot of the first gen switches were renamed. So what I was used to was like the US dash port number, and then if it's a PoE model, so it'd be like US 8 150 watt. Those SKUs are still the same, but they have kind of new marketing terms on top of that. So like that US 8 150 watt is now 8 PoE SFP Gen 1. The one part I do like is that they specifically call out Gen 1, because I always knew that the SKUs that start with US are first generation.
Yep.
The SKUs that start with USW are the second generation, but no one seemed to know that, and they didn't really call attention to that. So it's nice that they're specifically saying, hey, this is a first generation switch. But just like the 8 PoE SFP, some of the XG models are like 6X 10 GBE. It's very clunky, and I just don't. I've seen this a bunch. Their access points have been. They went from U6 to access point 6 to they throw new marketing names on top of the same product over and over, and I just saw that they just did it again with the switches, and I think they made it slightly more confusing.
One thing I noticed so if you look at that 8 150 watt switch again, in the SKU field they've put the period budget as well. So 150 watt doesn't mean is the actual period budget, because there is some wattage left over for the actual device itself, but they've put that PoE budget in there, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I think they did that for all of them, which is nice because that specifically calls out, like I know on the USW 16 PoE, that's the second generation rack mount 16 port, that has a very low PoE budget. I think it's 42 or 45 watts.
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
it's a 60-watt power supply, but then you need to run the switch, so there's only 40 or so watts available for PoE. So I do like that was one like calling out Gen 1, calling out the PoE budget. Because it is kind of misleading when you see 150, but it's actually, 120 for PoE devices. So good changes and weird changes, and it's confusing, and they'll probably change it again next month. So
yeah, I learned the hard way about that switch because I had two floodlights plugged into it, so the UniFi Protect floodlights, and I was like, like I noticed something went offline when the lights were on. It didn't clock that was happening. I was like, it's actually hitting budget when the lights come on because they draw so much power. So I had to put a second switch in. So yeah, it's got a very small amount of PoE budget. That's that switch.
yeah, and I mean Ubiquiti's always been a little squishy with PoE because they would quote the the power supply number, and then way down low they would say, hey, it's actually only 42 for PoE. And then they do quote, like, for access points and probably for cameras and stuff like that, they quote the maximum, so it kind of encourages people to overbuy, where you see an access point might use up to 13, so hey, I can only put 2 or 3 on this switch, but you might be able to get away with more. And then, of course, sometimes in hardware revisions, APs, like I think the U6 Pro has switched between needing PoE Plus and not. I think it was the U6 or the U6 Pro. But
yes.
it seems like it's constantly evolving, and they can't kind of be consistent and direct with those things.
Yeah, when the U6 Pro was launched, I think it required 18, and now does AF, which is quite good. And then, with the subject of PoE, they have, with the recent versions of UniFi, they have made the visibility of how much PoE your device is using really, really clear. So on the PoE switches, even the UDMs as well, it just tells you exactly how much PoE budget you have left and how much you're using currently. It's really, really clear, so it's really good.
Yeah, I love that change, and it seems like they probably had a ton of feedback about all of that, and that's why they're making it clear on the store pages, making it clear in the interface. All good changes there.
I think you mentioned what you've been working on recently. So your famous UniFi network and comparison charts have been updated again. So yeah, just want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the last big version I had, I think it was April. There wasn't a ton of new products. Usually if there's a new, like I remember when like the Dreamwall was released, that was like, hey, time to update. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't really anything specific that encouraged me to do this, but just kind of cleaning up, the switch rebranding, and because of the store changes, they have different categories now. So they have the quote unquote standard switches, and they have the utility category. So I added a few for those, just to kind of easily compare those categories. And then just in general, fixing things. I did a lot of work on the gateway comparison, just because the VPN support changed.
Oh yeah,
it's still like it. A lot of people comment and complain that it's hard to read on mobile. I'm well aware of that because I do that too and go, I can't see it at all. So it's a constant battle between how much detail you put in, how viewable it is on a desktop computer versus a phone, and that's why I try to provide them on Google Drive in various different forms. Like I give a Excel version if that's easier to read or go through. But yeah, so it's long overdue. I've been working on this version for a while. I just updated my Eero ones, and I'm working on a couple other vendors. I'm very overdue to update my like point-to-point and point-to-multipoint radio comparison charts. They're probably at least a year old. So yeah, that's a lot of tedious spreadsheet work. But yeah, I'm trying to go through most of those and add a few more. And then I also want to try to do cross-vendor comparison. So I was trying to like standardize, especially for access points, just like the categories on the left side, so that it's the same between vendors, so they're easier to look at. Here's one from Aruba and here's one from UniFi, and here, then you can kind of combine them as well and say, okay, if I want a Wi-Fi 6 access point and I'm looking at these 4 vendors, these are my options. So yeah, I would love to make it more accessible, especially on a phone. So I'm trying to think of ways around that. But for now, zoom in.
It's all good. And you had a lot of really good feedback on Reddit as well. So you usually post that to Reddit, don't you? So a lot of people really appreciate it, which is really good. So it's because Ubiquiti don't do a massively good job of, they don't do anything really to help you decide what to buy. And I think what you do is really, really good.
Well, yeah, they do a few good things. Like they have the UniFi OS console resource calculator.
Oh yeah,
where you can say, this is how many APs I have. What do I need? That was new a year or two ago. I really like that. And they do have a very limited, like, standard versus pro versus enterprise switch comparison. Just like high level, like, hey, if you need 10 gig SFP plus, you have to go to the pro. But yeah, I've always preferred an annoying amount of detail, so that's why I do these. So that's just me, and I'm glad that other people appreciate my effort there.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely, it's really, really, really good. Awesome. That's all the Ubiquiti stuff we got for this month. As always, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. For a full description of this show, visit the episode link in the show notes, and of course, check out the chapters, complete with images to make your listening experience much more enjoyable. We also have an ad-free premium version of this show available on Apple Podcasts that will help support this episode and future podcasts from the interface. Thank you for joining me on this episode of UI Chat. Where can people find you online if they want to find out more about you and what you do?
EvanMcCann.net.
Fantastic. And you can find the interface at theinterface.uk. And thank you for listening to this podcast. If you like what we do, follow the show on all the podcast platforms and YouTube. We have a video version on YouTube. Give us a rating, and this helps other people find this show. Thank you, Evan, for joining me on this podcast, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks. See you.